All right. Well, I'm grateful to see everyone. um, yeah, it's our first meeting of 2022. And what I wanted to do is just I mean, we don't even have to take long, but just touch on a few things, see how everybody's doing, just generally, and see if there's any concerns, any other topics people want to talk about. But the few things that are on my radar, one, well, one is in the email that I sent out at the beginning of the year. One thing that I'm going to try to do is I know there's interest in people serving in different ways and connecting in different ways. And so I'm trying to map out what does that look like for this year. You know, we've been trying to do this the last 2 years, but every year has been different with this pandemic. And this year, you know, it's hard to know exactly what the year will look like as far as virtual, in person, merged, all that kind of stuff. But I do know that there's the capacity for new visions to impact the community increases the more there are people engaged in ways that they really thrive. So, you know, Sonny, you've been a great example of in and of myself. I don't know how much I could have done with Carrington, but your passion for Carrington and work that you had put into it allowed us to really move forward on some things. And we'll talk about Carrington more in a little bit. So what I did is, you know, I recognize that sometimes people get scared away by official titles. And so I was trying to take a different approach with the survey that I sent out at the beginning of the year of basically saying, what are ways that, what are ways to serve that draw your attention, that you're naturally gifted at, that you'd be interested in serving in, and spelling it out that way and seeing how people respond. And if people respond in such a way that they would love to have, you know, an official title like treasurer or, you know, whatever, then great. But realistically, I don't feel like we have to have, like, functionally, we don't have to have that as much as we need people who are just stepping and saying, oh, you know what, I love to connect with neighbors. So I would really love to have be able just to call and check in on people and write cards, right? Like there may be people who would love to do those things that wouldn't be drawn to an official title. So all that to say, my encouragement to the broader body is to think about, you know, when it comes to our neighborhood, when it comes to new visions, to what extent is everyone willing to engage? Is it, I could give an hour a month. I could give a couple hours a month. I could jump in. I've got a few hours a week. I really want to see new visions thrive. Whatever it is. And in whatever way somebody wants to engage, the more people we have stepping in those ways, both small and large, is going to allow us to do a lot more in the community. So I'm going to keep on putting that push out. I've gotten a few responses. Want to get a whole lot more. So there's that piece. Any comments or questions about that before I move on to the next piece?
Well, you mentioned official titles. How would that impact the bylaws, since the bylaws does have offices?
Yeah. So that would be the next part of the conversation, depending on that, because here's how I see it. When I was voted in as president, pretty much all the other roles were also up. And what Sean was telling me is, he's like, there's just not a lot of interest in it. We're just not getting a lot of movement in these roles. And then the pandemic hit, which kind of, whatever progress there was in that, it kind of halted it. And the way I see it is, if we could get enough interest that there are people that are game to also have official titles, then great. We'll continue on as we have continued on. If we're not getting people interested in the titles, then there's no roles to have anyways, and the bylaws aren't even being enacted. And so if we get to a place where there's people if we get to a place that we have to think outside the box on what moving forward looks like, then the next part of the conversation will be, how do we rework the bylaws to fit where New Visions is moving forward? I think in functional ways, it's still going to be neighbors who care about the neighborhood stepping in and serving. But if we're in a season where we have to structure it in a different way, I'm fine with doing that. My main thing is, as long as there are people at the table, I'm fine if we go from a square table to a circle table or a standing desk. I don't care what the table looks like, just as long as there are people at it. So yeah, so that would be the next part of the conversation, is relooking at the bylaws. The reality is that the last 2 years have been so crazy that, we already are functioning in a very different way. So we'll see what New Visions needs to look like moving forward, and then we'll restructure based on that.
Have you talked with other presidents of civic leagues in the area to see if they've had a drop in attendance and commitment?
I haven't asked that question directly, but indirectly. So I have had a lot of conversations. There's a few of us, a few presidents that we were connecting every month or so, either in meetings with Cynthia Newbill or just a few of us just in and of ourselves. Over the holidays, we haven't done it, but what I've gathered is any entity that was already big and strong going into the pandemic is largely doing fine. So Churchill Association seems like it's still doing fine. I mean, they've got a lot of officers, they've got, boards, they're a very large entity. And so for them, it was just making that pivot to virtual. And I don't know if they were doing any virtual before that, but it sounds like that pivot worked fine. On the other end of the spectrum, I know there are a few smaller ones that are even like smaller than we are that there's unity. I think seems like it's I don't know if there's anything still happening with it that's like north of us. And so it's a mix depending on how the Civic Association was doing before, kind of shaped what it looks like now. And we fall in this middle place where we weren't large with lots of officers, but we have a lot of really committed people that care. Even if they're not functionally at the meetings, there's a lot of people that really care about what's happening with New Visions and Fairmount. And so that, I think, has allowed us to continue. But what I'm hoping to see is, we see an uptick in engagement. That's the place that we're lacking, is we have care, but we don't have direct engagement. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead.
How many responses did you end up getting to that for the survey that you sent out?
I mean, just a few to that. And, I also know partly what I've learned with surveys is you've got to put it out a few times in a few different ways before you really get responses. So I'm not too concerned about that at this juncture, but my plan is to push it a little more over the next, month and see and really try to communicate it in such a way. What I want people to do is just take a look at the survey and then see if any stands out to them. I think people can be scared of, is this going to make me have to commit to something? And what I want to communicate is no, like there's actually an option on there. If you don't have any capacity, that's what you check and you're done. But I'm hoping somebody might come in there and say, oh, like that way of serving, actually, I like that, or I'm really good at that, or, oh, I didn't realize I could use this gift set to benefit New Visions. And think, so I'm going to try to recast it. And then
I have a thought. Have you seen anything out on Nextdoor?
I haven't actually been on Nextdoor in a while because there's a lot of things that had frustrated me about it.
And and that word you just used, I was thinking about, sometimes rather than asking people about serving, frustrated with things going on in your community, wondering how you can make a difference, or find out about changes ahead of time, get the inside scoop. Because a lot of times what I found, and especially, Sonny, because Sonny's on the Carrington committee and more involved than Miss Thompson, had a lot of emails coming in. A lot of people, this stuff blindsides them. They were like, but what did this happen? Want to get in? So that may be a way to appeal people, and then rather than ask them questions, you may want to, in 25 words or 100 words, or let's tell us what you would like to see change in your community. And then it may require you read some of the responses. And if you add, say, and if you feel strong about this, what do you think you can not bring to the table, but do to help facilitate change? So, kind of, I guess, spur them on, I get them thinking about some things, you know, because and then you feel like you're not being heard, your voice can make a difference, you know.
Mhm.
And because a lot of people, you know, like I look around there and you see stuff popping up everywhere, and you be like, well, what did this happen? What did that happen? And we're all inundated with emails and newsletters, but share, did you know this was coming in? You know, with like you get stuff from the city, or Sunny might get stuff from the city, and push those types of things when notifications come up with zoning appeal hearings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
I don't know. That's just a thought that
Yeah.
came to my mind.
Yeah. Well, and even to that end, you know, I mean, here's the other piece is, yeah, and you named it, like people already get a lot of emails. Like I already know email and even Facebook are not fantastic ways of getting engagement. I already know that. The best ways are ways that we've been stifled from being able to do, which is in-person stuff, like having, you know, community cookout, going door to door, all these kind of things. And so that's the other piece that I'm actually exploring. You know, one thing that I've talked about wanting to do for the last couple of years, and now because of the work Sunny's done on the website, we can actually enact it, is I want to, even while we're in this space where it might be hard to actually directly interact with people, I would love to create door hangers that have the website and send a group out to go and just put them on doors. And if people are home, great, knock, tell them about it. But you know, the problem that we've always actually noticed, and when we've done surveys in the past, and when I did a survey a couple of years ago, I can't even remember when it was now, maybe it's 2019 in the summer, I did a community survey. And one thing I found is that one of the big reasons that there aren't more people coming to New Visions is there's a lot of people that don't even know New Visions exist, right? Like, because how would you, unless you are a part of the Facebook group or know someone or stumbled onto a meeting? And so that's why, you know, it's broken my heart that I haven't been able to do a big community cookout in the yard, because that's one of the things I was most excited about coming in as president before the pandemic ruined it. Is, all right, in this big yard that's central to our our footprint, just do a big community cookout, have people come out and say, hey, this is New Visions. And so that's one thing I'm exploring. What I know is that for that to work, the door hanger thing, you know, it can't be the four of us going out and doing it, because we can't cover a whole neighborhood in one swoop.
Three of y'all. I'm like,
right. And that's what I'm saying is like, that's assuming all of us could, but even getting schedules together. So what I'm actually looking at is I have access to service groups at different times that, you know, groups of young adults that are coming in for spring break and that kind of thing. And I'm trying to work out to see if I can get a group of them to go out, because they're also doing it as a part of ministry work. So at the very least, you know, they can incorporate other pieces into what they're doing. You know, they could do trash pickup while they're doing, like, it can be really meaningful, a really meaningful project for them, but also really great for us, because this kind of thing, like canvassing, needs a large group. And as we've seen, even in New Visions past, it's oftentimes it would usually end up being just 3 or 4 people. I remember John Merton, like sometimes he'd be upset. I was like, why aren't y'all coming out? Come on. Don't just leave the 4 of us out here. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing that hopefully will become more an option to do more in-person things, you know, being involved in some of the other stuff that's happening, like with, and I'll just plug this now. I sent in the email, Rick Tatnaw is working on an annual event, coordinating, you know, around, I think it's April 4th, and it's coordinating around spring breaks to really engage youth in the community over at Unity Park. So even having a presence there, that kind of thing, you know, just getting our name out there to the people that are here in our geography and saying, yeah, we exist to be neighbors helping neighbors. So if you care about the neighborhood, this is a good place to be.
Okay, well, since a lot of people are on social media, I'm going back to next door. We can do a virtual canvassing and marketing.
Yeah.
Instagram is a good way. A lot of people are on Instagram. You have the talent. You already have some stuff on YouTube where you can make a video, a promotional video. Somebody can, you know, can help and make a promotion, you know, because most people are, you know, their senses are a bit visual. So, and they always have new people introducing themselves on Nextdoor. So, hey, new to the neighborhood, let's tell you about New Visions, you know, because you probably haven't heard. And you can go as far, you can go within the community or reach out further, because sometimes it's like, okay, there's somebody may live in the fan, but they know somebody who just recently moved to Churchill. So a short video, maybe no more than 2 minutes, with some good music or something behind it, whatever to kind of promote it, because that's what more people are joining there. The older people, the canvas things on the doorknob probably will help draw some people in. But I typically like, what's this hanging on my doorknob? It's usually the pizza people or somebody's church.
You got to make it stand out from the pizza.
Yeah, so and that way you can make it stand out for the pizza, and then maybe have something on there. Go to our YouTube video for more information.
Yeah,
and that's the same video that would kind of get people, maybe generate some interest.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good. Two thoughts to that. One, I will say one thing that is really important to me is because the reality is a lot of the new people that are coming in are going to be drawn more towards what you were describing, like the online content. What is important to me is to also be very mindful that we don't do what I think happens with a lot of civic associations, which is they pivot too hard into that, and then they end up pulling back on the approaches that reach out to the large demographic of the community that, like you mentioned, might not be online as much, aren't on Instagram.
Well, we can do both.
So yeah, so I think so. I just wanted to name that. Like, I think we do need to do both, but I think that's one thing I've noticed even over the last few years, even demographically, seeing the shift within New Visions and a lot of longtime members. I'm sure for different reasons, sometimes health reasons, things like that. But I think what made me really sad is seeing some of our longtime members no longer being as engaged, because I'm like, but your voice is so incredibly important, especially if we want to retain the heart and the values of New Visions and of the community, because people who are new to the community aren't going to have that like institutional knowledge of what the community was like and what that could look like. And it's not saying new voices are bad, but they are different. And so that's one thing is, so we will need to continue to do both. But to the other end, this is why the survey and getting commitment from people is so important, because I do have the skill, like I have skills to create this kind of content, but I don't always have the time, the energy, or the passion around that. Like graphic design, I know how to do it. I am not passionate about it. So for me, it ends up being like a chore to create a flyer. Whereas there are people in our community right now that love graphic design, that they're like, oh my gosh, like I already have an idea, done, like 2 minutes. And Instagram is another example. I am on Instagram only because I thought I knew that would be a valuable thing for the podcast that I do and the other content that I create. Do I like being on Instagram? No. Do I enjoy making posts? No. So it feels like a chore to do it. And so my hope is that the dream for me would be that what we're talking about comes about because suddenly we have a handful of people that are coming alongside, in a more intentional way for New Visions. And we have people that are like, oh yeah, no, I love marketing stuff. I know about it. So I'll take ownership of that. I'll be the person that is our online presence. And then I would say, fantastic. If you ever need anything, let me know. Let me know how I can support you. I'm going to support you in that. And someone else says, hey, I love just going and walking the streets and mobilizing teams to go out. Like, I'd love it. Great. I'm going to support you. Right. And so the dream for me would be for my role to shift to making sure we have people in certain places and supporting those people in those places and getting them what they need. And then those people take ownership over these things. And so I guess all that I'm saying is you are completely right. And for that to happen, we need more people for it to happen in a really valuable and meaningful way. We could still engage as we are, and we will, but yeah. Any other thoughts on all this? This is good conversation.
I'd just like to add something. I think a good takeaway from it is that people need to be educated that it's a benefit to them to be part of New Visions.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they realize that. They might not know that New Visions exists. That's one. And then the other thing, they say, oh, it's a civic association. When I moved to Richmond 6 or 7 years ago, and I was told about New Visions, I didn't really know what a civic association did. I thought it was just kind of a group of people that got together and talked, and it was kind of just like a community thing. But when I went to the first meeting, I saw so much action and passion, and then I was like, wow, you can really make change through, you can shape your community through this, through the civic association. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And it was just like a click for me. I loved it. And I think a lot of people don't know that. So maybe if we've kind of focused on that in our outreach and telling them, like we said at the beginning, people are complaining about things happening in the neighborhood. Well, they don't, maybe they just don't know that they literally can come to New Visions. And I mean, we have access to leaders that like Cynthia and others, where we can enact change.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
Yeah. And actually that reminds me of the idea that Sean and I were talking about a couple years ago. Is here's the tricky thing is because you're completely right. Like there are people that are in the same boat as you that are like, I don't need to spend my time just sitting around talking. But if we're actually accomplishing something for the neighborhood, like, yes, I'm in for that. The funny thing is there is also people that are like, I don't want to go to a meeting. Like they're like, I care about my neighborhood and I want to just talk about what's going on, but I don't like meetings. I don't want to give my time to a meeting. So it's like, man, you've got these two different demographics, but that are all important to it. And so one thing we talked about is, one way to address that is to alternate how meetings work, or so maybe, every other month, maybe there's like the more formal meeting that's like, here are some business things, here's what we're accomplishing. And then there's more gathering meetings and have some kind of a rhythm to that. One small way that we've enacted this is having these set apart email groups, since everything's been virtual. And so when everything was happening with 2200 Carrington, that information only went out to those who had expressed interest in that type of information. Because I knew there were other people that are like, I don't want to get all this stuff about development. I don't care about, I care, but I don't know what these emails mean. And so learning how to better like divvy that out and create space to meet both those needs. And then, like you said, communicating that in a clear way. Hey, if you're action oriented, like here's the space for that. Here's what we're doing. And here's what we've already accomplished, what we're going to accomplish. Check out this webpage. Look at all we've already done. Right. And then, hey, like your voice really matters. And I know you don't want to come to sit in a meeting all day, but like we're having this cookout coming. Like we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear, like going back to what Frida said, like we want to hear what matters to you. And so, but again, all this happens when we have more people at the table that can help to make it happen. And then the more voices we have, the easier it is to flesh this stuff out to the point where you get to like Churchill Association, where you have all these clear committees and all these. And I don't know that, I don't think our goal is to become like Churchill Association necessarily, or to become huge, because our DNA just might be different. What our group, New Visions has always looked different than other groups. And I think in some really good and beautiful ways. We just need to figure out how to like really capture that in this new season of the world.
Going back to what Sonny said, and I was just thinking about it before he said it, we live in a society where people are like, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
So, part of the marketing could be, how do civic leagues benefit you? Did you know? And then, like you said, list some of the highlights of the accomplishments. And did you know that did you know that we had Sonny and Carrington? Did you know that New Visions was part of this or part of that, or help with the neighborhoods, past accomplishments? And what's in it for me? Let you decide what we want to have as our future accomplishment. That may help engage them too. Because there's some people, that may have as my mama used to say, a willing mind, but a weak behind.
Yeah.
But they're willing to do it. But if you prompt them and, get them to thinking about it, and then like you said, at the gatherings and they talk about it, and then they may commit to it because they take ownership of it.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will commit to something they've taken ownership of.
Yeah.
You know what, but a lot of things we do see on Nextdoor are kind of, to me, superficial. Everybody's, people just complaining about first world problems, like train whistles and dog poop and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And why is the city out there digging the street up at 2 o'clock in the morning to keep you from blowing up because there's a gas leak?
Mhm.
So some of it's a lot of murmuring and complaining on Nextdoor.
Yeah.
But put it out there in a positive, did you know this is the benefits of being involved? Then they can be like, okay, well, I didn't know. Like you said, they don't know. And we have a small geographic area, and a lot of people want to be part of the big dog, like you said, the larger civic associations. And one time they had talked about combining them, but that'd be another meeting and another time, another place. That's too much.
Yeah. Well, and I think there will always need to be a place for the more honed groups. But I will say, so what's happening though is, as I mentioned earlier, there are a few of us presidents of civic associations that are connecting, because what we recognize is that while there are those honed in issues, there are also broader things that affect all of us. And so we're working on figuring out how do we collaborate on that. There's also a survey that's going to be going out to civic association leaders that is going to gather in what is it that what is this civic association, how does it work, how large is it, what does it do, et cetera, what are some of the concerns. And they're going to take this survey and see what can be done from that, is around this idea that you said of a larger entity that connects all these things. And so this is something that had started to come about before and then kind of faded away and was in and out. But that survey, I just talked to the person about it. I'll be doing that survey when they send it out at the end of the month. And so, yeah, I think what we're looking at ultimately is there is an interest in more cross collaboration, but also we will always have a need to be our thing. And what I tell people too is when people are like, what is the geographic footprint of New Visions? I'm like, well, I'll tell you what it is. But honestly, anybody who wants to be a part, even if they're in Europe, they can, anybody who wants to be a part, they can be a part of what's happening here, because what's happening here impacts beyond these blocks. So I don't want to hang here much longer, just because I do want to talk about Carrington, because that's a pretty big deal. But I will say this, these are all really good ideas. I'm tracking with all of it. I agree with all of it. Some of it, like, I really want to do. And I think a good next step is just within our own circles, as a small start, just be thinking of if there are people, neighbors that you have, people that you've connected with in our geographic footprint, people that used to be a part of New Visions. If anybody comes to mind that you're like, they don't know about New Visions, but I think they'd love it, or they stopped coming to New Visions, but really, like, I don't know why they stopped, or I know a person that lives in Fairmount that loves marketing, like, right? If we start in these small ways to just kind of send out to our own networks, then that can start to build up little by little. That builds out. But just be thinking if anybody comes to your mind that you can encourage. And I would say particularly any former New Visions members. And I say former because if they haven't been around, they're all, once New Visions, you're always New Visions. But if there's anybody that hasn't been around in a while, that it's not because of significant barring reasons like health or they moved, even reaching out to them, say, hey, we're coming into 2022, looking at bringing new life to New Visions, and we'd really love to have you back. So let me tell so think of who comes to your mind, put a little plug out there. I'll keep y'all updated on the stuff on my end, and we'll see where it goes. Let's talk about Carrington. So, and Sonny, you feel free to jump in at any point. But I gave a quick blurb in the email that I sent, but the short version is this. Carrington has been a focus of New Visions for a long time. And there's a lot that we could talk about with Carrington, and a lot that we would like to see done. And there's just a lot of potential for that street, particularly for our community and for the East End as a corridor. Specifically now, one thing that's being worked on is there's a proposal to make Carrington one-way. So right now, Carrington is two-way except for at 24th and 25th Street, where it goes down to, I think, 20 feet. And it's just not possible to have parking and two-way traffic. So that one little section over by Da Vinci's is one way. But the reality is the bulk, if not all of Carrington, is 24 feet wide, which I think I saw, if you want to have parking on both sides and two-way traffic, I think the minimum is 28 feet. I could be wrong on that number, but it's more than 24 feet. And so we're below the minimum of what it takes to have parking on both sides and two-way traffic. And so where we've been forever with Carrington is both of those things trying to exist, to have parking on both sides and to have two-way traffic. Functionally, what that means is one car is going to have to wait while the other car comes down the road, because you can't fit two cars and two parked cars. And so there's a proposal out to make Carrington one way. And there are other options, obviously, for example, to keep it two-way, but to eliminate parking. But the danger there is what we are seeing is there's a lot of development right now. I mean, 2200 Carrington is going to happen. That's going to have a number of units, which means it's going to have a number of cars, and it's going to have some kind of a commercial space, which is also going to be a number of cars. And even just here on 20th, I mean, houses are going up like this. And so parking is going to be a huge need. So weighing through those, there's a number of us that have been talking about it, and we feel like the higher value is to retain parking. So in order to retain parking, what do we do? And making Carrington one way is the easiest, and in some ways seems like the clearest option, especially since there's grid streets all over. And so where that process is now is that's been in conversation since August, started before that, but really picked up steam with the 2200 Carrington project and our concerns about parking for that. Then that got to Cynthia Newbill, and she was wanting to press it forward. A lot of connections happen. I've been talking with Cynthia a lot. She's been trying to gather information. We gathered some letters of support, tried to find some. I pulled out that binder of all the minutes from New Visions, trying to look through there and see what. That's a lot of paper. I couldn't make it through. But where we are now is it seems like there is a good chance that it could happen, and it's in process. And Councilwoman Newell just wants to make sure that it is the will of the community as she moves forward. So that's the broad sweep. Raymond, Sonny, if I miss anything, let me know. And then also, if anybody wants to get some dialogue going, feel free.
I think you summarized it quite well, Paul. Just to note, I see Dean's here. Dean hears us, but it's one of those things where we've talked about it a lot. We did the survey, I think it was 5 years ago, and there was a slight majority that wanted it to be one way, but we had a number of other topics there that people could choose from.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a clear-cut case, but it was more than people who wanted to eliminate parking. Mm-hmm. And then we did this study 2 years ago with a VCU and their feedback from the community charrette, and also taking in the information from that survey, they made the conclusion that it was best for the neighborhood to convert the street to one way. Mm-hmm. So we don't really have anything concrete from New Visions. It's been in passing, mm-hmm. But I would be open, and I don't know if we can do it with the five of us here, but to put it up for a vote, to have a discussion, and then have something official from us that says we did talk about it, and that it is something we'd like to do, or something. If the majority of us here don't want to do it, then that's what it ends up being. But I would like to do some sort of vote today if it's possible.
That's a good idea.
Hi, this is Dean. So the proposal would keep parking. It would make it one way, but there would still be parking on both sides of the street, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I agree with y'all. That's probably the main thing, is to keep parking. Would it be going one way east or one way west?
It's a good question.
I think it's east, right?
Yeah, I think
It's
it's east. I would hope it would be
Opposite
east.
of Barton.
Yeah.
Okay, what, when you say east or west, is that going towards Mosby? Or
No,
going
going towards
Da
Henrico.
Vinci?
Yeah, Da Vinci.
Yeah.
Da
The
Vinci?
Enter from
section-
Lee Street and then go on till 25th.
So if you're on Mosby, you make a left or right onto Carrington, and you can keep Carrington on up to
25th.
Burton.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think,
25th.
yeah, and the Barton is the good, I didn't mention that in there, but the fact that there already is another parallel one-way street is part of this as well, that exists, and coordinating that with the opposite direction would make the most sense.
What you say, Rita?
I agree. I agree. I think it's a good idea. It's usually kind of crazy down there anyway, so
Yeah, I would
would help.
prefer. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think it would help a lot.
I think it would help a lot too. I see a lot from my back window.
Mhm.
I would prefer one way with parking on both sides.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want to get rid of parking. Parking is
No.
a beast around here now already with
Right.
these, with 4 people living in one house as roommates, and everybody's got a vehicle. Then they got overnight gas and all that foolishness.
Yeah.
Well, oh, go ahead.
No, I'm good with the one way. I would sign off on something official.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say these two pieces, one, I think it's just good to name the reality that like we want situations to be where there is like one absolutely amazing answer. And it's hard for us when that's not the case. Like the reality is Carrington is just the way it's set up. You have to sacrifice something, right? So I think it's good just to name that out the gate. We have to sacrifice something. So then the second question becomes what is the wiser sacrifice? And if we sacrificed, driving west on Carrington, you have other options. Like you just go the next block over and you go. Some people even choose to not drive Carrington anyways because it's such a headache. So it's not like we're going to lose much. If you choose to sacrifice parking, there aren't other options for that. Once the parking is gone, it's gone.
We're not
Right.
getting parking.
Yeah. So I think it's just when we look at it, we just say, yes, it's something does need to change. Yes, it is going to cost us something, but we feel like the wiser choice is to sacrifice two-way traffic for the sake of retaining coveted parking so that we don't end up like it gets in some of the places downtown where it's like, or even, gosh, right at Chaco Valley. I picked up something from somebody one time that lived at those apartments, and I had to park like nearly not a mile away, but I had to park an exceptionally long distance away. And I'm like, man, do y'all have any of your own parking spots? Because there's a lot of y'all in this building and not a lot of parking. He's like, nope. When I get my groceries, I park a 5-minute walk away. Just so, we all agree parking is important. So, all right, well,
I have one question about Carrington.
yeah.
Because I know the exit when you're traveling, if I go out my house and make a right turn, would there be a 4-way stop or a stop? Because I know people coming down, what is it, Pink to Tulip, a Pink to 22nd? Sometimes if you're coming out of Carrington, although it won't be one way, would they change the stop signs? Would it be a 4-way stop? Because people can come around that corner and swing through there coming down 22nd Street pretty fast.
Yeah. That's a good question. I haven't heard anything specifically about that. And I imagine signage will be a part of that conversation, but there's also a chance that they won't think about that part of it. So we may need to
address it.
We need to bring that in. I would say that I don't know that we want to bring it in right now, just because with these kind of things, it's like a balancing act. You want to get as much in there as you can, but not so much that it tips and they're like, oh, right? Like it's a tedious process to get things to move. And even just the speed at which this is moving is faster than it usually is, but not fast, not fast at all. Like this shouldn't be taking as long as it is, but that's just how processes work. And when you have a lot of departments, then a lot of conversations that need to happen. And so, yeah, so let's keep that on our radar. Man, I'm blanking on, it's been so long since we've done an official vote that now I'm blanking on the term where somebody like proposes
Makes
it.
a motion.
Makes a motion. Thank you. Would somebody like to make a motion to vote on this, on Carrington being one way as an official stance for New Visions Civic League?
You make the motion.
All right, I make the motion. It's been so long since we've done it. All right, I make the motion. Anybody want to second it?
I second it. I
right.
second
A
it.
third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, unanimous.
All right.
It's
All
on
right, great.
recorded, so we got it
We
recorded.
got it recorded. It's
I got a
official for
quick
all time.
question.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. Sonny, what time is it over there?
It's 6 hours ahead of you guys, so it's 4 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Close to 4. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
That's
it.
This is a record. You've traveled the longest distance in all of New Vision's history, I think.
Yeah.
Well, so the two big things that I had were to talk about the plans moving forward a year to get more engagement, to talk about Carrington Street, and then to plug the Unity Park event on April 4th. That is good for us to engage because that's right on the edge of our footprint and is going to be an incredibly valuable thing for us when that thing develops. The only other thing I'll mention is just to name, I mentioned that there's a lot of development happening. We've all seen it. We all know. But I just want to name, man, 20th Street. I knew there would come a breaking point where suddenly a lot of stuff started happening. And I knew that the 20th and R project would probably be the thing to break that. But just in the last few weeks, so we've got 20th and R. If you haven't seen it lately, it's got siding on. So now it looks, they're on the inside stuff now. So it's worth driving by and looking at. It really did. They did a good job with their renderings because it looks a lot like their renderings. The one really sad thing, and Frida, you were mentioning supply issues and construction costs. The thing that really is sad for me is that the whole reason they did the 5 houses was so that they could bring down the prices versus if they do 2 houses. And pandemic and construction costs just really messed that up. And so the prices are still lower. I think the highest unit is like 290 or something like that. It's under 300. And I mean, I just had a house right here behind me sell for 430, and it's not a new construction. So it is more affordable, but it is really sad that due to the pandemic, it's not at the level that they had originally hoped it would be. So grateful for more affordable, really sad about just knowing some friends who are just priced out currently in Churchill. But right over here, I don't know if any of y'all knew Curtis Bennett. He passed away a few months ago, but he lived in half of an attached home that was just sold, and there's now a giant dumpster out front. So they're going to be working on that. The house beside that, an old White House that they've been working on that really needed to be torn down, but they're going to try to rebuild it. It needed a lot of work. That's happening. So right now I'm seeing a lot of stuff starting to pick up. So, if it's happening here on 20th, I know it's going to pick up a lot more around the community. And so it's just something for us to be mindful of and to think about, what do we need to be aware of as New Visions? How do we need to engage? How can we make sure that benefits the whole community? So I just wanted to throw that piece in there. There's a lot of movement happening, a lot of construction sounds all the time. But any other things that y'all have either on that or just in general as we wrap up?
Did everyone order their COVID tests?
Your 4 free ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I got mine the other day in the mail. I was like, I didn't order anything. Then I was like, oh, this is what this is. Did you get yours, Rita?
I got mine last week.
Yeah.
I think it expires in June though.
I was gonna say I want to check the expiration. We got some from RPS for our son, coming into the new year. And they all had January, or ours had a January expiration date. And I was like, oh man, we can't hold on to this one long. Yeah.
Have you taken one? What is it? Do you have to do the thing up your nose?
I haven't looked at the, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, as far as mine, I haven't even really looked at it.
I would imagine it's the same one. It's a really easy process. You have this little billfold looking thing. You do the swabs. You stick it in and you let it sit for 15 minutes. Really simple. I mean, it's simple enough. We did it with our kids.
I think you have the ones that that we just got. I think you have to put some drops in it to
And into the little
yeah.
fold thing. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it's
They
a
had
clear
to,
process.
when I was watching the world news, they had to remind people that the drops is not for your mouth or your
Mm,
nose or your eyes.
hmm You got to over communicate sometimes with people. All right. Well, if there's not anything else, we'll wrap up. I will say, recycling, there's been some issues around pickups for that. So if you ever are confused as to what's happening, the website is CVWMA, Central Virginia Waste Management Association, cvwma.com. And they do a good job on that. There's a banner always at the top that they try to update frequently with what the current status of things are. So I know our recycling, it took a while for it to get picked up this last round, but ours finally did. And so that's just a good resource to know about. So
They're on Facebook also.
oh, that's good to know as well.
And you can send them an instant message
Yeah.
if you need to have your bin picked up or anything.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I've been, it's good to know. I didn't even think of looking on Facebook, but that's good because I always see in the neighborhood groups, people like there'll be in a given day, 20 people asking the same question about recycling. I'm like, hey, here's the website. Because some people, they don't quite know that they can find the information, or it's just a lot easier to put it out there. But when you see it 20 times, it's fine when it's one, when it's 20, like let's all learn the collaborative resources.
People will ask you what they have access to on Google just because. I've never understood that. People ask you questions. I have the same Google that you have.
Yep. I found the answer just now by typing it in. You can do it too.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll just send them the link.
Yeah.
I say Google is free.
Yeah.
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 I'm gonna start charging.
Yep. All right. Well, we're right at 10. I appreciate all of you. My aim is to continue on this monthly rhythm, but again, I'm very flexible to whatever things need to look like in order to get engagement. Then we're going to do that. So keep an eye out on the emails. Reach out to people that you think need to be involved and give that a little nudge or hard push if they need it. And then we'll 2022 is going to be our year. We're going to make it happen. It's going to be good.
All right.
All right.
Testify.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great
Bye.
weekend, y'all.
Have a good
Okay.
weekend, guys.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.